What is up, Nico Nation? Welcome to Snap Count, our seasonal NFL news series where we go over any and all news surrounding the NFL. This time it is 2025 training camp that we will be talking about. I'm your host, Niko Chambers, Nico the Draft Guy. You can call me. I'm here alongside my co-host, P Dunn. P Dunn, what's up, man?
I'm well, man. I'm really excited for this. We've got some really awesome topics we're getting to dive into today. It's been a while since we've got an episode out, so we've got some bangers we're ready to talk about.
Oh yeah, a lot's going on in 2025 training camp. We're kind of midway through it. And there's just a lot going on in the NFL world. So let's just go straight into it with the holdout watch. The main storyline right now, James Cook, we want to give highlight and shout out to him. Just signed that 4 year, $48 million extension. But besides him and him hopefully reporting as soon as possible, we got a bunch of stars on this list who are holding outs, holding ins, a lot of different things going on. Pete, can you decipher some of this for us?
Yeah, with Terry, there's a lot with this situation. He's a guy that was a huge part of Jaden Daniels having such an amazing year, the Commanders in general having such an amazing year last year. And I think from what I understand from the situation, he's asking for that top tier level of money from the Commanders. And I think he feels that he deserves that. And I think the Commanders are understanding that yes, as big of a part as he is, not just on the field in the locker room, he's also a aging receiver. You're not Terry McLaurin is not improving year to year the way he was when he was 24 years old. And to pay him the same money that guys like Jefferson and Jamar Chase are when they are getting better year to year, I don't think that's fair to the Commanders. So I do end up thinking they will get a deal done soon. We'll see if that happens by the time the season starts. I highly doubt Terry McLaurin will not be on the field for the Commanders. With the Micah situation, it's a little different because there's a lot more money we have to talk about here. You have arguably the best player in the league, and he's asking for to be paid like that. And then you've got the stubborn of all stubborn with Jerry Jones, who wants to get another year out of a cheap Micah Parsons. And I think I highly doubt Micah's going to end up on another organization. Jerry Jones is not going to let him walk out the door. But you've got two really stubborn sides here. And this one might go for a while. Do you kind of feel how I do about these two? I think they're both going to stay with their respective teams.
I think so, but they got a lot of work to do. That'll take us into kind of what we got here, talking about kind of Terry and Parsons here. There's just so much to decipher between these two. I do think the Terry McLaurin deal will get done, but the Parsons one is really difficult. So, for all the people who don't know, can you give us kind of a synopsis of kind of the timeline with the negotiations with the Cowboys and what's really going on here with Parsons?
Absolutely. So as everyone knows, he is still on his rookie contract, and has been looking for an extension for a while now. And this is something that we see more often in today's day and age than we have in the past, that when you don't get the the contract you want, you request a trade, and that's what both of these players have done. Whether they're really requesting to be traded or more of a statement that I'm not happy with where this is going is up. It's kind of I think both of these are on the contrary. And so I especially with Micah, I do not think he's going to get traded. I would say there is a sub 10% chance that he's going to get traded. McLaurin, I can see a world where somebody gives them, a Godfather deal. The Patriots have been rumored to be in negotiations, and at least interested. I don't know whether the Commanders are taking calls yet. We don't have intel on that. But it is going to be really interesting to see whether that happens. The interesting thing with McLaurin is that just 2 years ago he signed that extension. He's on a new contract, and I think that with the uptick in play that he feels he's had, that he deserves a new contract. But I think the Commanders were happy with where he is, and so it's going to be really interesting to see. I guess that's a new wrinkle with the Commanders thing that not a lot of people are talking about. Obviously, Micah's still on that rookie deal, so there's some similarities with these situations, but all in all, they're two very different very different situations for sure.
I would have to agree. I just think that it looks like totally the McLaurin thing is really just a number, and somewhere they're going to meet in the middle of that number. That's what I think is going to happen. Parsons, it seems like a relationship thing. They clearly want Micah Parsons. He's clearly worth the money. But it just seems like a relationship type of thing with him and the Cowboys. We've heard a lot of what Jerry Jones has had to say about this matter. Um, can you give us kind of an insight of kind of what he's saying and ultimately the large scale reaction of everybody around the league, whether it's fans, players, coaches, GMs?
Yeah, I think that the big thing with Jerry is I think he, that is a guy who historically, even looking back over the last few free agency classes, has kept his money about as close to his belt as he can. And so I'm not to call him cheap because he's the owner of the Dallas Cowboys, but he certainly likes to keep his money when he can. And so all this is, I think, is him wanting to keep a rookie Micah Parsons on contract for another year. And he's made it seem like this isn't a big situation. He's kind of played it off as if it's not something super important. And I think that to the Cowboys fans, and especially to Micah himself, is really frustrating from their perspective. You've got as if I was a Cowboys fan, I would be incredibly frustrated with what's going on right now. And so it's really interesting. I think again, like I said, like I think this is just a stubborn thing from Jerry Jones. And I think the closer, if Micah does continue to hold out, I think Jerry will come around. But also, if you're Micah, you want to put yourself in Micah's shoes. Like I don't know how much confidence he has. Like he looks in the mirror and he says, "I'm the best player in football. I'm the best edge. I think I'm one of the best players in the league, and I'm gonna commit to this team for a long time." Who I want to win a championship, and I'm going to commit to this team who has just made the head coach hire they've made, and with the GM possibility of the change of leadership at the GM position and owner position with Jerry coming up in the next few years, I don't know whether he wants to put his name to that. And with everything else that Jerry has been doing, it's just I get it from both perspectives. I don't really, I don't, I definitely get it from Micah's. I think, let me rephrase. I don't get it from Jerry Jones, but it is very on brand for Jerry Jones. This is very, you could have seen this coming. This is something he does. This is very historical for him. And so, yeah, it's a deeper situation the more you look into it for sure.
100%. We'll move on to Terry here. And really kind of looking into this situation. What is Terry McLaurin asking for? And like, what is the missing piece in the communications with the front office and his agent?
I think you nailed it. I think it's a numbers thing. And again, like I don't know, we don't have the specifics on what he's asking for. It could be guaranteed money that they're not meeting eye to eye on. It could be just the average per year. I don't know what it is. I know that the Washington Commanders absolutely are understanding that that is the guy they need to have on roster. But if Terry McLaurin's asking to get paid what Jamar Chase is getting paid, or anything really near that. I don't think Terry McLaurin is a top 8, 9 receiver in the league. I could give you a lot of receivers I would rather have than Terry McLaurin. And so with him being asked to pay that money, I don't think they're willing to do that. And I think it's smart on their part. It stinks that this has to happen like this. But again, this is something you're seeing more and more in today's NFL. I think that that is really what this is boiling down to. I think it is a numbers thing, like you said.
I think big picture, I don't think he's asking for the Jamar Chase and Jefferson money. It's hard to see for us to see kind of we have no idea. We've heard him talk about he's looking for parts of DK Metcalf's contract. And of course, right here, it's worth noting that Sutton just got extended 4 years, 92 million. He's a 30-year-old receiver as well. So they're kind of in the same ballpark. I mean, I would rank Sutton and McLaurin. I think McLaurin is better than Sutton, but I think that they're neck and neck in terms of where they are in their careers, how they have performed. Both very underrated receivers, but you know, it does change everything what he's looking for. And once we find that out, that's ultimately that'll give us the teller. But does he deserve this second contract with this commander or this third contract with this commander's team?
It's so hard to say when we don't know the numbers. If, like you said, if with that report that says he's not asking for that money, then of course, like there's a number that is worth Terry McLaurin. Again, like I said earlier, because of what he brings to the locker room as well as what he brings to the field. But there's a very stark. I'll tell you what, if he was asking for a reasonable number, the Commanders would have given it to him. They're not that this is not, especially with the new organization of the success that they've had last year compared to what they've had in the past. They know how much of a fan favorite he is. They would have given him probably over market value what they felt is fair to him. And so I'm really struggling with what him and his agent and his team feel he's worth compared to what he's asking for. I think I'm blindly trusting the Commanders front office on this one for sure.
100%. But ultimately, big picture, I'm asking you as an analyst, do you think that situation will be fixed by the end of camp? And if not, give me a destination and a trade package.
Um, I I think so. I think Terry McLaurin is kind of just trying to stick. I don't think he's a bad human. I don't know Terry McLaurin personally, but I think he has good intentions here. The locker room respects him for a reason. The fan base loves him for a reason. And I think that he's trying to get everything he can out of a good season last year, and I think I respect that. And so I think he will stay with the Commander. If not, there's plenty of teams that would love to have him. The Colts have been someone that I've heard a lot about because he grew up a Colts fan and they obviously have a need for a top tier receiver. That it feels like they've thrown a lot of darts at a wall and nothing's hit yet. Outside of Michael Pittman getting recently extended, I don't know if he's that receiver one you're looking for. And then the Patriots obviously have a need at that receiver spot. I feel like he'd be a great plug and play for Drake May. Somebody that you could extend for a good amount of time. They have a bunch of cap space, and somebody that could kind of carry Drake May into his second contract. And once Drake May is ready, you can move on to maybe looking for another wide receiver one.
100%. Talking back on the Parsons train, is that relationship long gone in your opinion? Can it be fixed by week one? And if not, what is the premier destination and package for the edge rusher?
And so that's the thing is I don't think Micah gets traded. I think he either is a free agent next year and gets one of the largest free agency deals we've ever seen, or he stays as a Cowboy. No, Jerry Jones is not going to accept the trade packages that most people are going to want to send. You're not getting more than a couple first round picks for Micah Parsons because I mean, if you knowing what he's worth and then having to go into another contract year next year with the way he's handled his extensions, I don't know whether a lot of teams are willing to take that risk for putting up a couple first rounders on the line. And so I think I do think he gets an extension done. I think both of these guys get extensions done by the time the season starts. And if not, I do think, yeah, I'll give you this wrinkle. I think if the Commanders don't sign an extension, I think McLaurin plays. I think if Micah doesn't get an extension, I think Micah continues to hold out, if that makes sense. I think that Micah will stick to his guns. I think McLaurin will play for the team even if he doesn't have the contract he wants.
I think that Micah Parsons will not be starting week one. That'll be a choice thing. Obviously, also to note, he's also dealing with a back injury. But I don't think he's going to be on the field week one. There's something really fishy about what's going on in Dallas with the negotiations on Jerry Jones's part. I think everyone in the building wants him there, and there's clearly some issues. Jerry doesn't want to talk to his agent, only wants to talk to Micah. It's a mess right now, and we're too close to the season being
Yeah.
3, 4 weeks away to kind of have so much change in favor for him. I think we can see him upwards of 3 to 4 weeks sitting out, and that's ultimately what it's going to be. I do think, Jerry Jones is stubborn, and I think that Michael will have to throw in the towel at some point, and I think he will. But hopefully they can get that deal done. Ultimately, both these guys are stars. They need to get paid. Just numbers is all it's about. But I do think that the Parsons situation is a relationship fracture, and we will have to see what that looks like. We'll move into our next segment. Camp crushers are surprise studs who have balled out during training camp 2025. Pete Dunn, you got three guys here, all three rookies. Talk to me about your guys.
Absolutely. So we'll start with Emeka. He's obviously the Tampa Bay Bucks first round pick last season. And he's been playing awesome. I mean, with the absence of Chris Godwin and Mike Evans aging, they wanted to invest in that receiver core. That's a pick that we both saw as someone that's going to be a really good pro for a really long time. And he's been just that going into camp. He's been fantastic. He slid right into that first rotation. And all the reports coming out of the Buccaneers side is that he's been amazing. The high floor player you saw out of college, that slot kind of field side receiver that we both knew he would play, with Mike Evans still continuing that X role. And it looks like he's going to slot in as that wide receiver too, which is really exciting if you're a Bucks fan, especially with Chris Godwin coming back sometime. There was reports for a while he may be back week 1. It's not looking like that's going to happen. You're probably eyeing a week 4, 5, 6 timeline for his return. When you get those back, that's going to be an awesome receiving core, and not just for this year, for the considerable future as well. So that's going to be really, really cool for him.
100%. I'm going to talk about Torrey Horton here. Fifth round pick out of Colorado State for Seattle. When you got some of the best cornerbacks in the league and Reek Woolen and Devon Witherspoon telling you that you're Jerry Rice Jr., man, you must be playing and balling out. I think he's going to be really good. It's a really questionable, not questionable, but it's a very wide open receiver room in Seattle. Obviously, you know, losing DK and Tyler Lockett this offseason, you threw in Cooper Kupp as a signing. JSN obviously is going to continue to surge. MVS is there. But kind of after that, Jake Bobo's on that list. Torrey Horton's on that list. You got a few other rookies and other role players, but he could really play himself into a really good role with this Seahawks team. I'll go straight into Joe Milton now. Joe Milton, I mean, hearing what Jerry Jones is talking about him and how he's so happy that they got him, that's going to be really cool to see. I don't know how it's going to work with Dak right now, but second year Joe Milton, I think if they can develop him, he can be an absolute stud in this league. So yeah, Joe Milton, definitely a guy to keep an eye on.
Going into Josh Simmons here, a guy that, I was super high on, one of my favorite players in the draft and my favorite pick in the draft. And it has worked out really well for the Kansas City Chiefs, as all reports seem to have come. He is healthy, and he's playing well in preseason. He went out with the injury to Juwan Taylor. He went out with the starters in the preseason game, and he's been taking all of the first team reps in practice up to this point. And all of the things we are hearing is that there's a really good chance he's not going to give it back to Juwan Taylor when he comes back healthy. He's going to take that spot and he's going to roll with it. That is everything you were hoping to hear. And he's been fantastic up to this point for the Chiefs. Everything he was advertised to and more. And then going into Ariante Ursary for the Texans, another rookie tackle, with the obvious overhaul of the Texans' offensive line from last year. There was a lot of question marks on this team. And they invested a pretty high pick into Ursary, and they were really excited about him. Obviously, a guy that, coming out of college was a big project player. And I say big because he's incredibly large. He's a really big human being, a guy that they really like the upside for in the future. And then they brought in Cam Robinson to play left tackle, who played great for the Vikings when he was traded there towards the back half of last season. And unfortunately suffered an injury this season to his knee, I believe. And so Ariante Ursary has been plugged in at left tackle, and has also been playing really well. A lot of eyes have said that he's been really similar to Josh Simmons. He's taken that spot, and I don't know whether he's going to give it back. Cam Robinson was on a 1-year deal with the Texans this year, kind of a stopgap. And I think they were expecting Ursary to maybe take that spot next year. And, he's just completely advanced that timeline, and it looks like he's settling in really well with the Houston Texans.
For sure. I'll round it out here. Ricky Pearsall, he didn't really have a training camp last year. He got shot going into his rookie year, but just hearing the reports at a 49ers camp, obviously you're dealing with Ayuk, you're dealing with Juwan Jennings. I think he's going to be a really good player for him. There's a reason they took him in the first round. It was more of a shock to anybody that they did, but I feel like they wouldn't reach if they didn't have a skill set for him. They didn't get to utilize it that much last year, but I think he's going to capitalize on everything that's going on with the Niners now. Completely different kind of shifted team. They've lost a lot of guys. Obviously, injuries are plaguing them on offense right now. I'm really excited to see what Pearsall kind of does for this team. That'll take us into the position battles. A really big headline kind of around this training camp. We'll obviously be talking about the Browns and Colts at the quarterback positions. A lot going on there. Pete Dunn, how do you decipher with preseason snaps and reps, like who is going to be who? We've gotten depth charts already, but give us a little insight on how you feel about these main headline battles.
It's fascinating. And I'll tell you what, I'm really grateful for it because this is, both of these quarterback battles are some of the most entertaining we've had over the last few years. And so there's been a lot of really fun headlines coming out of both of these situations. It seems like with the Colts side of things, it does seem as if Anthony Richards is trending towards being the starter. We still have, like you said, a couple weeks until week one, but from the reports that I've heard, and again, not saying he will be, but I think it's a 60-40 battle right now between him and Daniel Jones, from my understanding. And then with the Brown situation is just it is I've never seen anything like this, man. We could do a whole podcast on it. Like you've got everything that went down with Deshaun Watson, who's hurt. He's not even playing this year. And so you've got a guy like Gabriel who's hurt. Flacco is projected to be the starter. Gabriel's gone down in the last, not down, but he's been dealing with some things, and Shador has taken that spot, moved up on the depth chart, and then you watch the preseason game and you see all the Shador jerseys in the crowd and him doing all his funny stuff in a preseason game. It's really interesting to see what you make of that. You've got the long-term starter with Flacco, who I think I projected to be the starter coming into this training camp. And then you've got Pickett, and it's interesting to see whether that happens and whether he takes that job. He did go down with an injury today in training camp, in a
Did see
joint practice
that.
with the Eagles. So that's something to keep an eye on. I don't know how serious that's going to be. Obviously hoping he is healthy and can get back because that was about as entertaining of a preseason game as I'm going to see.
It was awesome to see, just electric. And ultimately, I think one of these quarterbacks is going to have to be cut. You're not going to carry four of them. So I don't really know who it's going to be. I think personally it should be Dylan Gabriel. But I don't know. They seem to be favoring Dylan Gabriel a lot, and they seem to just be hating on Shadur Sanders. And, you know, I did think the slide was kind of warranted a little bit, but to the fifth round was a little excessive. I wasn't high on Sanders. Um, but I wasn't high on Gabriel at all. And for Gabriel to go before Sanders was weird. And for the Browns to take Sanders after taking Gabriel, that's even weirder. So I think that the whole point of that was to, draft them both, see who's better, and they're going to cut the other one or trade the other one. I don't know what they're going to do, but this is a fascinating storyline. It's something to keep an eye on. I'm rooting for Shadur Sanders through and through throughout this process. I think he's getting an unfair advantage. And it'll be really interesting to see. I'll talk about the Colts real quick. I don't know what they're going to do. Obviously, Richardson got hurt in the first preseason game. They should be starting Richardson. Daniel Jones is probably a good backup for what's going on here. He's more mobile than you would think, so he would fit into this offense a little bit better than a lot of people would have projected. Riley Leonard is also there. That's something to note. He had a pretty good preseason debut, but it's not pretty at Colts camp either. And the fact that you're having a competition like this with a guy you drafted 3 years ago, and was, at four overall, it was supposed to be the star of the combine and everything. That would should be concerning. And it's going to be ultimately interesting to see if they even extend him past his rookie deal. We'll kind of go in here. I'll shoot a few at you. I want you to tell me who you think is going to be the starter. We'll talk first about what's going on in New Orleans, Tyler Shuck or Spencer Rattler, and why.
I think it's going to be Shuck just because of the investment they used to get him. That was a sign of confidence taking him in the second round. If you wanted to take Rattler going into next season, you would have not drafted Shuck when you did. You would have drafted a Gabriel down the line if you wanted another rookie quarterback. I think they believe in Shuck. You and me were not in this group, but there was a group that was high on Shuck in the draft community going into the draft. And so there is obviously a group of believers in him, and the Saints happen to be in that group. And so I do think they're going to give him the nod just purely based on the fact that he is a rookie and they did invest in him in the way they did.
Going to New England now, Ramondre Stevens and Trevion Henderson. We've seen some things with him. We think he's going to be a stud. We'll get into that in our next segment. How do you think this RB room will shake out?
I think it's going to start with Stevenson, because I think Travion Henderson, his idea, and we talked about this a lot in the pre-draft cycle. His ideal role is a change of pace back. He's not an every down back. He's not someone that you're going to be able to even remotely give a 15-20 carry workload to by a week basis. We saw what Ohio State tried to do with that, in his sophomore and junior seasons. And then when they brought Quinshon Judkins in, who was a down-to-down back, Travion had the best seasons he's ever had in college. And so they're going to try to replicate that with Stevenson, who is still a capable back. He's not a top-tier back. But as the season goes on, you will see a lot more of Travion Henderson, and I think he's really going to step up into that role for sure.
100%. We'll switch to LA here. Marion Hampton and Najee Harris. Najee Harris had an eye injury in a 4th of July incident. Do you think that will affect him being the starter here for the Chargers?
I don't know, man. I'll tell you what, I don't think I've ever heard of such an obscure injury. I saw a report today that there's a chance that he might be out for the season. And that would just be absurd if that's how that happens. You have the total, like there's such a wide range of outcomes here. He could be back by week 1, and he again, like I said, could be out for the season. So tempting to say that if they're both healthy, I think that this still starts with Najee, similar to the Trayvon Henderson one. And then it definitely goes by Hampton towards the end of the season. He takes over that room just because of how ridiculously talented he is. He is a top tier running back. And so I think that they definitely start to gravitate towards him towards the end of the season. And if Najee is out for a considerable amount of time, I think they're more than happy to plug and play him and give him that workload right away.
We'll go to Green Bay here. Matthew Golden versus Jalen Reed and Romeo Dobbs. Tell me kind of, I think it's different. I think all three are a little bit of a different receiver. So break that down for kind of the fans here to understand, because I was not high on the Golden pick at all. I felt like you throw him in, obviously, Watkins is hurt and a lot of things are going on, or Watson's hurt, and a lot of things are going on in the Packers camp. They drafted another wide receiver and Savion Williams also. How do you make sense of everything here and align it on a depth chart?
I think it's pretty simple when you try to look at it from a Romeo Dobbs is your X, Reed's your slot, and Golden's your field side receiver. I don't think it makes as much sense when you try to think about target share. I think they obviously believe in Golden. I believe in Golden a lot. I had him as a top 15 player. I think he is talented enough to play all three of those positions. Neither Dobbs or Reed can play two of those positions. They are both one-dimensional players who can only play at one spot. And when you see a guy like Dobbs who's had off the field issues, you see a guy like Watson who cannot stay healthy for the life of him, and Jalen Reed who is a slot-only player, Matthew Golden eventually is going to have to need to step in for someone in some role. And he's going to be able to take advantage of that because of his flexibility to play where he wants to play. I am very excited to see what he does in this offense, especially with Jordan Love, hopefully healthy at the helm.
I think Jordan Love's going to have a killer year with all the guys and all the weapons he has there. That'll take us into Hey Rookie Fantasy Edition. We'll kind of talk here and analyze kind of our top sleevers for fantasy and dynasty PPR formats. Pete, you got your guys on here. Start with 1 and 2 here. Tell me about
Yep.
them.
So I got Warren at 1. Doing a little bit of research before we went into this episode, he is currently going in the 10th round of fantasy drafts. I want to remind everyone about last year when we had a fantastic rookie, generational rookie tight end who we saw go to a team with a not super solidified receiver core, and a not super solidified quarterback position. He was the best tight end in football last year. And so I truly believe I had Tyler Warren as the fourth best player on my big board. I truly believe Warren is of that caliber, maybe in a different sense of the type of receiver he is, but I think he's just as good a receiving back, or a receiving tight end. And I think he's going to be really, really good in that offense. I don't care if you're taking, a guy like Bowers early on in the fantasy drafts, I would get your hands on Warren if you can, especially at such a late round. And then going into Henderson, a guy that we just talked about, obviously, he is a big play threat. He's a guy I think you're going to have to invest in. He's not going to be able to play in your starting lineup week 1, but I think as the season goes on, and especially if a injury happens to a historically injury-prone Ramondre Stevenson, if Henderson can get his hands on a bunch of touches out of that backfield with a offense that we all think is going to be a lot better than what it was last year, I think the ceiling is really high for Steve or Henderson.
Of course. Well, I'll go into 3, 4, and 5 here. I'm going to start with Caleb Johnson. I love this pick. I think we love this pick. Him going to the Steelers, obviously with them losing Najee, In the offseason. I think it's a match made in heaven. You obviously have Arthur Smith's run heavy defense there. You got Aaron Rodgers. You just newly acquired DK Metcalf and a departure of George Pickens. So just a little bit of a swap there. There's more uncertainty around all of the positions on offense, if you will. But I do think that him and Jalen Warren together, it's going to be money. And I think that by the end of the year, Caleb Johnson will be the main option out of them two. Obviously, I think Warren's more of that pass catcher than anything, and Caleb Johnson's going to just smash mouth on everybody. Jaden Higgins, a guy who's listed here as wide receiver number 2 in the depth chart. Um, Obviously, you're going to have Kirk in the slot, and then the other guys for the Texans ultimately. But Jaden Higgins, he's a big body receiver drafted in the second round, and he's going to have an immediate impact. You saw what happened last year. Obviously, no Tank Dell for this year. You have Nico Collins there, but you saw what happened last year when Tank Dell, Stephon Diggs, and Nico Collins were all healthy. They all got the ball and they were all studs. So you're going to be throwing a Nico. He's going to be getting double covered. You got Jaden Higgins as the next guy, and you have Christian Kirk to kind of fill in there in the slot. It's going to be awesome for this team. And then number 5, Elijah Arroyo. I think more than anything, with the uncertainty, we talked about it with Torrey Horton, the uncertainty that's going on with the Seattle kind of offense more than anything. Um, it's a bottom 5 offense in terms of guys getting paid. So you have all that, and they just cut Noah Fant, which I think is very telling to the whole thing. He was a massive cap hit for years, the last 2 years. Probably should have been a casualty last year. I'm not shocked that he was this year. But that just tells you the trust they have in AJ Barner, who was the rookie last year, and then obviously Elijah Arroyo. He's going to step up. I could see him playing some slot. I could see him doing a lot of things. They could move him around. He could be a big body X receiver at the same time and kind of replacing Metcalf. I don't know what they're going to do, but I'm really excited to see what that looks like.
Getting into Iomena here, a guy that, we were both a lot higher on than where he went in the draft. We were both really excited to see what he could do paired up with Cam Ward over the next few years. And I think we're getting a little taste of that in the preseason. I think on the depth chart, it was really interesting to see that he was listed behind Van Jefferson. So he was a 2 technically, but then we watched him come out with the 1s for the Titans preseason game. I think this is a guy that is really going to complement Calvin really well. And in a receiver room where Cam Ward's going to have to throw the ball to somebody, I think he's going to be a great player outside at X for this team. I think he's going to get a lot of targets, and I'm definitely excited for what he's going to be able to do this season. Jalen Royals, a guy. I have no idea what's going on with the Chiefs receiver room, with everything going on with Rashee Rice, with the charges. I think he got 2 years in prison, so I don't know what's going to happen there. And then, Xavier Worthy, a guy that's ultra talented, but definitely more of a fidget tool player. Andy Reid's going to be able to scheme stuff up for him, but I don't trust him to be a down by down consistent receiver. Jalen Royals will be that. He's more of a slot player, but he's a burner. He can do the deep threat stuff. He can do the route running. A guy also I thought was going to go before he got drafted. And then a guy that I think really will be able to succeed this season. When you have a quarterback like Mahomes in a receiver room that isn't super crowded, I would definitely bet on that guy. And then Dylan Sampson, a conversation really similar to what we had with Caleb Johnson. Obviously, with everything going on with Quinshon Judkins, the guy that we expected to be the running back 1 in that room, is kind of still up in the air with what's going to happen with him. And so Dylan Sampson is the guy that they're going to turn to. I know that Jerome Ford's also in that room, but that's not a guy that you really, I think, expect to be your RB1. And Sampson is someone that you can see taking that role, a super talented back out of Tennessee last year. And I think that, again, with the absence of Quinshon and kind of knowing what you have with Ford, I think that Dylan Sampson is a guy I would definitely invest in.
I think it's crazy when we throw in a 5th round wide receiver that was not very high on our boards on this list. That's got to tell you a lot. Dante Thornton Jr., he was, not really on the list, but in the first depth chart of the season, he's ranked wide receiver 2. And this is a wide open receiver room for this Raiders team. New regime with Pete Carroll, Geno Smith. I don't know, but for fantasy purposes, you may have to go get this guy. I don't know what's going on. And then finally, we'll kind of round it out with Tyler Loop. Ravens needed a kicker. They got a kicker. That's your rookie. Justin Tucker, with everything going on, he was kind of, with everything that happened with Justin Tucker, he was kind of ticking on the downtrend as it was. He was missing a little bit more kicks and stuff. I'm excited for Tyler Loop. You got a team that's going to run up the points. You got a guy who can kick the ball. There you go. It's pretty simple there. that'll take us into kind of our last segment, our preseason outlook, kind of what we're looking forward to. We got four things. We're going to keep going back and forth real quickly about them. I'll start off. I'm looking forward to JJ McCarthy's return to football. I hope that they play him in these preseason games. I know they played him in the first one. I hope they play him a lot though, so we can see kind of him because this is a real big question mark. But I have a lot of trust in this Vikings regime with everything they got over there with Kevin O'Connell and all the guys there throwing the Jay Jettis. I think it'll be really cool to see. But more than anything, want to see him play football, and I hopefully hope that we can see that this preseason.
Absolutely. Talk about Will Johnson, a guy that, obviously was one of the bigger names and headlines out of last year's draft class. The Cardinals added Sean Murphy Bunting from the Titans, sorry, in last year's free agency to kind of solidify that room. They also had Starling Thomas, a guy that they believed to be that projected starter. He got injured with an ACL. He's out for the season. So Max Melton was a guy that they drafted last year out of Rutgers, a guy that they really liked and got good production out of last season. But you got three corners fighting for two spots. And I think that with the high floor of what we liked out of Will Johnson, I think he's going to beat out one of those guys for sure. So that's definitely something I would keep an eye on this offseason.
100%. I'll run into the Jalen Milroe sweepstakes here. We're very high in him. I'm a Seahawks fan. Love this dude. I wanted him. We got him. Now, mainly, I want to decipher what they're going to do with him. Ultimately, with the snaps and the drives, obviously, I don't think he's going to be the starter going into this year, but this situation is very comparable to what Russell Wilson went through his rookie year. They signed, a quarterback who wasn't necessarily big name to a big contract, and that's what they did with Sam Darnold, Matt Flynn, very similar. You got a third round quarterback who's going to play well in preseason. We'll see what happens. And Russell won that job. I don't think Jalen Milroe is going to win the job, but I just want to see what they do with him, how creative they are. I think it'll be really interesting to see.
Yeah, to bounce off that real quick, Milroe's just a guy that you can't keep off the field. They're going to have to get packages in for him, and I'm really excited to watch that too. So diving into the Bears offense, obviously the headliner of this offseason is hiring Ben Johnson as the head coach. It is going to be really exciting as a Bears fan to see what he does. And not only that in itself would be a huge thing heading into the offseason, but you've got the additions of Luther Burden, Colston Loveland. You've got the new offensive line. There's so much to be excited about with this offense. And I'm really excited to see how, they handle Caleb in his second year, getting the ball to all these playmakers. You've got five or six guys that are talented enough to get the ball really consistently on offense and kind of figuring out how that's going to work. And then obviously, how good really is this new revamped offensive line that's getting a lot of hype right now.
For sure. I'll go both at the same time here. Pat's A+ draft in action. I think it's going to be really cool to see all those guys. We love the draft. We rated it very high. I want to see what they do with all of them. And then, of course, Giants D line. How do we line up Abdul Carter with Kayvon Thibodeau and Brian Burns and everything that's in the interior there? I'm super excited to see that.
Yeah, and then mine are two of the similar note. You've got Trey Lance and Tanner McKee, both are backups. Different stories. One was a more, obviously, way more higher draft pick, but they both played really well this offseason, and I think are guys that, are on trade boards for other team if something does happen to a team like the Vikings, who are going to need to trade. Let's say JJ gets hurt, they need a new quarterback. I think both of those guys are going to be potential options for multiple teams as this season goes on.
There it is. What an episode. Snap count. Thank you so much for tuning in. We look forward to coming back to you throughout the season to continue this video series. But for now, so long. Thank you guys for watching.